I'm Dustin Richardson, and I'm surrounded by a fantastic crew on a fantastic day for a fantastic reason. I'm going to shortly just get a brief introduction from each one of you. Jason, why don't you introduce your crew?
I'm Jason Hankey. I work at Vector Management as an artist manager and had the pleasure of working with Kenny for many years and with you, especially. But, he was an amazing man, and it was just one of my favorite clients ever to work with. Just lots of great memories and all around great guy like you here. All the stories are true. And and this is Wanda ROGERS.
I'm Wanda, and I was married to Kenny for 28 years, and we have twin boys who are now 20. And it was a wonderful, wonderful time in life, and he loved you, Jason, and all of you go so far back with him, and Kenny, everyone in the organization was more like a family, so it was really, really a beautiful thing.
I'm Keith Bugas, and I was started working with Kenny back in the old Kenny Rogers in the first edition days around 1972. And I was fortunate enough to literally work with him his entire career after that.
Wow.
So it was a blessed life full of good times and good friends. And I always thought of Kenny as more of a good friend than a boss to me.
Over here we have the legend that is David Leonard.
We've done 2 albums for Kenny in Atmos, and I've been privileged to be a part of those. And I also worked with Kenny and Dolly when I worked at Sunset Sound in Los Angeles in the 80s on the Christmas record. And I was on staff at Sunset Sound. So not 46 years with Kenny, but
A lot.
You've known him a while, though.
To my right is Mills Logan.
Yep. And I've done quite a bit of Atmos mixing here for Universal. But yeah, I did a good stint with Kenny, with Brent Mayer, the producer, and Jim McHale, the co-producer and engineer, all through the 90s. And lots of great stories, lots of great times. And Kenny was, like everybody said, more like a friend than our boss.
And to my left, we have Chris.
But
Yeah, Chris Wall.
So my role in this little story here today is that I work at Universal for the Archives division. And as it all ties in and what brought us all together today is, as part of the job, UME, catalog division of Universal, is working with Jason and the team to put this new project out. And they come through me to get the assets and put everything together. And then we connect it to the studio. And of course, Mr. Leonard over there, who did an amazing job producing this. But that's the piece that ties us all together here today, is what kind of brought this together. And I think what comes out of it is what is going to be a great story. Yes, we're talking about the technology as well, but the project itself, we're talking about the man who's touched every person in this room, whether we knew him personally or not, but, we've all had that a minute with him, which is amazing.
Really quick, Keith.
Yes.
You've been working with Kenny for 47 years, right?
Yep.
What was your first interaction like?
I mean, touring was so different, again, we're talking 1971 or so when I first met him, I mean, the first edition, they got around by driving their own selves around in a van, They set their own gear up. They had no crew whatsoever, and so it's a long story how I got there, but I ended up working with a little sound company after I finished college. And they did a little tour with Kenny Rogers in the first edition, setting up PA and that type thing. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, all of the people in the first edition were just as down to earth as possible. And so during the show and after the show, we'd just say, what are you doing? Let's go get something to eat and that type thing. It was all just 5 people and me, and we'd just go out. And then eventually they said, hey, well, we're thinking about hiring a road manager. Would you want to have a go at it and stuff? So again, it was the right place at the right time. But it was based on the whole idea that they were such great people. It was an easy decision for me to do because they were just what you'd want your coworkers to be and also be friends, So it was easy.
Well, it seemed like it worked out pretty good.
Well, it's a joke. I said I could never really find a really, really good job, so I never had just one job. That's all I had. I couldn't find anything else to do,
I love that. That's awesome. And a little bit of a segue in getting into Life is Like a Song, because that's probably what ended up bringing us all here today, ultimately, and kind of putting a new twist on the album. But I would like to mention, and this is more than just us gathering here, it's a celebration. Today is Kenny's birthday.
Yes.
Isn't that amazing?
How wild is that,
awesome.
that this worked out, that we get to do this on this day, his special day.
Yeah.
So cool.
To remember him. But let's talk a little bit about Life is Like a Song. YouTube would probably be the best place to do that.
This was really your idea and putting it together like in a story form of, love, family, and ending, and just how life is. And when we were talking about it, all sounded so great, and you made it all come together. Well, it took a team of people, but yeah.
It was an honor, and I think that just to honor, your longtime husband and all of our friend here, it was just a really cool thing as we started putting it together and just seeing different sequences and what songs he left behind, or like kind of seeing a theme, come through here. And it came through really strong. And I think that, like you say, if you start the first song and listen to the whole album, old school way, it runs. It's basically the story of life, and more specifically, the story of your life with him and with the boys eventually. And so I think everybody can relate to it, but we want to do something really special for Kenny's fans that hadn't heard this music out of the vaults yet.
And that's, I think, a big piece of this. You guys have stuff. You went into the vaults and you were just pulling stuff, and some we haven't heard before, and some have been teased out there in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of ways you strip down. Why don't you maybe kind of explain a little bit of that? Like, some of the tracks are stripped down to his vocal, right? And use new musicians and in some capacity, right? Like, how did this whole thing, like, did you discover a box, and say, hey, and then go to Jason again, hey, what do you got, How did that kind of come about? Where did that come into play?
Kind of like that.
It's like that, yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
it
it
was.
was kinda like
It
that.
was sort of like that.
We had this here and that here, and turned over a bunch of rocks. And actually, it took, a full team effort, from Kenny's band and crew, and we even had one of his crew members flying from Kansas City, and there was a hard drive in a storage
They had to crack.
area, and we had to pull some stuff out. We were getting stuff from everywhere, but yeah, I think that what we came up with for this was just fit together just right, and I think it's something that he would be proud of. That was the main thing that we tried to set out to do, is give something great to the fans, but we wanted to make sure that it'd be something that Kenny was 100% behind, and I feel like how it ended up, that it really would be something that he would
be so proud. And what's so interesting is, and you know this, Keith, one of Kenny's favorite things, being out on tour and before going on stage, he would get the band together and they would do in a music room. He always wanted a music room set up so that he could hang out and talk and warm his voice up and sing. And many of these songs were the songs that he would sing. I heard Love is a Drug quite a few of these songs.
Yeah.
I heard it so many times. And he used to say, hits I should have had, And so he would be so proud of this project. No doubt about it.
We talk about Atmos on these shows and we talk about technology, but what's great about this project is how emotional it was for each one of us in a different way, in our each capacity with Kenny. Obviously, yours is a lot more personal than mine, but at the same time, Kenny, growing up as a kid, I've said this 1,000 times, I had my music as a kid. I was the youngest. I was the baby, believe it or not. I was the baby of the family. My brother had his rock stuff. My sister had her Barry Manilow, But Kenny was mom, dad, me, and my brother and sister, it just fit the mold. And it just, that whole time, and it's such an influence. But what's great about this whole project and listening to it, it sounds new. Like, it does feel fresh. And I know that's kind of what you set out to do, but his voice was just as strong on the first track as the last song as it was something from 1982. It's amazing, and I think this format does showcase that. And I think sitting in that room, and again, we'll get into it, but it just felt like each one of us had a connection there. Like, Kenny was almost in this room with us, and I know it sounds religious, and I'm not trying to get there, but there's something about the purity of this and the experience. It's not changing the record. Your original plan of this record, the way it sounds, the way it was recorded, is perfect. What David did to it, it just opens it up and enhances it a little bit, but he didn't change your vision. And I think that's a big piece of this conversation. How did you approach this project, saying, here's a done project by another producer and all these engineers and mixers, and now it's in your hands to make it sound different?
Well, I mean, it's all about the voice. Kenny had an amazing instrument, and it's just about keeping the story of the song. It's still about the songs. So it's just a different package to put the songs and spread some of the instrumentation around the room, but Kenny is still the focal point of the image and what you pay attention to, and all this other candy comes around the room. But it's always been about the singer, So that's where we're at. But Jason did a great job putting all this stuff together, because a lot of it was, like you said, like you touched on that. Some of what he had was archival stuff, and some of what he added new, but it's all seamlessly done. It's really well done.
And when you're doing the Atmos, like the tracks you got were just multi-tracks, right?
Yeah.
You're redoing this, you're creating their vision from the ground up, right?
Well, we faithfully try and stay with what they've done in the stereo.
Yeah.
So when you listen to it, you're telling the same story. You're not reinventing the wheel. But yeah, we try and stay close to that.
It's interesting because, like, when Wanda talked about the music room, it was every show, every city for 30 years, there was a music room, him to work with the band and go in. And he would have, some days we would sing songs that were his. Sometimes the guys in the band would play Doobie Brothers songs, so he would sing those songs. But what's interesting to listen to the mixes that we heard, there would be little bits of one song that would kind of remind me of a song that he did in the dressing room, because I was with him. It was like I'm hearing him sing like you and I are talking. Right. So it's not necessarily I'm listening to something on the stereo or through the PA or whatever. I mean, I hear the nuance of his voice from 4 feet away. Right. And so to listen to the mixes and that type of stuff, and all of a sudden he's 4 feet away, is pretty cool.
It really transports you, like you're there while it's going down. It's like the first time I'm hearing this all over, even though I've heard this 100 times.
Yes.
Yes. Or 1,000.
And you can pick out different things in the room by just, tilting your head around the room. So it's pretty neat.
Now, with you mixing it in Dolby Atmos, like, what's your approach? Like, are you trying to, gimmicks can get a little...
I'm the most non-gimmicky mixer.
There we go.
And I am the gimmicky one.
Well, because there's a different approach. Every genre, and anybody that gets to experience that format.
If it serves the song.
Right.
But if it doesn't serve the song, then I don't want stuff flying around the room. Like, why is the guitar player moving back and forth?
Kick drum on the ceiling.
Yeah, that doesn't serve the song. So I'm very sensitive to the artist and what they were trying to do, and the song they were singing, the story. Yeah. And it's not about the flying balls in the room. So.
Right.
But once in a while, if it's a little synthesizer part that has a little noise, I might move that around.
If it's a B3, you can have a little swirl. Right?
You do what you do, Mills.
We're flying toasters. He's doing it all over there, man. Just
I think what's neat also is the fact you can get so much separation from things. Right. So which means that the voice could be crystal clear and not be affected by tones from other instruments overlapping on top of this.
A lot of in the stereo, and then with a lot of compression and stuff, it can get very competitive inside those two speakers. But in the Atmos, you're spread out, and that you can get a lot more real estate to move stuff out. Yeah. Sure.
It's funny. You also did the Gambler album. That's the first two of Kenny's that we've been lucky to do. And it's funny because I was saying to you before, listening to that older record, but his voice is pristine. Like you realize how much control it just kind of isolates. It's just not that you're like, wow, you can really appreciate it's not compressed anymore. But you just got that vibrato, and it comes straight through, and it sounds as clear today as it did. It sounds clear to me, obviously, because it is cleaned up, but it just really reinforces one artist.
Well, it was interesting because, I mixed his live concerts, and, you can go into an arena and it's just so much echo and reverb and all that type of stuff. Yes. And I would do sound check in the afternoon, and I'm thinking, I'm going to die in here today. I'm actually going to die. But the thing has got to his voice. I was always able to pull his voice in, no matter how bad the building was, because he had that edge on his voice. He had that little style that he sang, and I could always somehow get him over all the stupid stuff. And so it was made it easy in that way, So.
Yeah, and he had such a wonderful tone. You can make it loud, and it doesn't.
That never hurts.
Yeah.
I think Mills has a good vibrato story.
In the probably mid-'90s, Pro Tools was starting to become a thing in Nashville, probably 96, 97. And I was the Pro Tools op on this particular record that Brent Mayer and Jim McKell were working on. And we had been recording Kenny's vocal, and I was comping the vocal. And, Jim McHale, the engineer, said, "Hey, take his vibrato and make it last for like 30 seconds." Because Kenny had a very distinctive, vibrato that was very steep and very much him. And so we did that, and we all got a chuckle out of it. And and then a little bit later, Kenny walks into the control room, and Jim goes, "Hey, play that for Kenny." I'm like, "You can't play that for the artist. We're making fun of the artist." And so I play it, and Kenny he cracks up. He goes, "Hey, Wanda, I think Wanda, come in here and take a listen to this." And it's going for like 30 seconds. He thought it was the best thing ever. I thought, there's a great guy. Kind of making fun of him a little bit, and he was right there with
it.
He loved it. So
I think he had some 15, 20 seconders in the first edition. Some of those recordings.
I know.
You listen
He did
back
all
to
his on
those.
his
and
own,
into
yeah.
those. Yeah, it's
Sure.
pretty close to that.
yeah, we were always cutting up, and he was just a hoot to be around.
Yeah,
Never a
Lionel
dull moment.
he'll make fun of him. Well, whenever they used to do a special here and there together, Lionel would make fun of him doing a note like that, Rogenize it.
That's funny.
Rogenized.
Yeah, I love that.
So we had a sense of humor.
He
I mean,
did.
I guess
Yeah,
that's
well,
the sort of
hey,
takeaway
that's
there.
the
We were
key.
talking about earlier, it's the fun making business.
Yeah.
If you're not having a little bit of fun while you're
Yeah,
doing
that's
this,
right.
you're doing something wrong.
But it's also awesome, like, as people of our certain age, to hear that, because you grew up, when you don't do you want to meet the artist? Do you want to ruin that
He
illusion?
was a good one to meet.
And everything, like I said before, Jason and I, there was a project he did when he was on Warner, that I was at Warner at the time, and it was down here in Nashville, and Kenny was there. But it was like old school in a way that he was walking door to door, right down the hall, his tracksuit, and he was it was amazing. And everybody in the office was popping out and say hi to him. It wasn't like everybody just doing their thing, and just saying his highs, and that was the best. And seeing how happy he was and about it.
After every concert, we would, our bus driver would be trying to beat the crowd. And Kenny would come off stage and he would shake the locals' stagehands. He would go and shake everyone's hand to say thank you before he would leave. And even in the end, when his back was killing him and he may have needed a little bit of assistance, he would still take his time and goes, "I just want to say thank you." It was a beautiful thing, but he meant it. He really meant it.
The first time I witnessed that, it was just something to behold because, you just don't see that from hardly any artist, that would go and shake everybody's hand and say, "Thank you for your help tonight." From security guys to, whoever it was backstage there. And it's just really special. You saw a great insight to the man that he was just by the way that he treated people like that. And he never took himself too seriously.
Oh, he never did. But a funny thing is, Jason would pick him up to go. This is back when you go to the radio stations and for interviews or anything.
Yeah, and a lot of
he'd
times recording studios.
And Jason would pull up to the bus door, and here comes Kenny, and he would always bring him an ice cream cone from the freezer.
That's what I'm talking about.
Every time.
Got a drumstick and whatever else.
Yeah, exactly. Like, which one do you want?
And they'd be like, "What's it going to be today, buddy?"
Yeah.
Wow.
But every time. It was his thing.
Yeah, and then
It
if
was
he
his
didn't,
thank you.
yes, and if he didn't bring ice cream to the recording studio, then he's like, "I think we need to drive through and get a Frosty."
Yeah.
And he'd go through and get a biggie
All
Frosty.
the time we'd
Yeah.
go get Frosties at Wendy's because it's right across
Yeah,
the studio.
and I'm like, "Do you really think this is the best idea before you go
Yeah.
and do your vocals?" He's
I
like,
know.
"We're good."
It's also the same thing with like Make-A-Wish people that he would meet at intermissions, all that type of stuff. He never tried to rush through those. He took his time and made the people really feel like they were important to him, So
What was his relationship with Dolly?
Kenny would say this all the time, is they could not see each other for 2 years, and they would be together at an event or something, and it was like they had seen each other yesterday. They never lost that, chemistry and that caring for each other. It was a fantastic relationship.
It was so special. And Kenny would always say, she tries her best when the cameras turn on to embarrass me. Or she'll tell the dirtiest joke in the room. I mean, no offense to Dolly. I love her. I think that's great. But he would get a kick out of watch her. She's going to try to make my face turn red. But they did. They truly loved each other.
And there was always a moment before when they were on tour together where she would come in backstage before she was supposed to go on or whatever, and there'd be 3 or 4 minutes of just silly giggling and laughing and just like you said, try to make him feel uncomfortable or something.
Yeah.
But they were really great
Very
friends.
close. Yeah.
It's one of my favorite moments when I was around them, and I know it was several times, but was the recording the last studio album that wasn't a Christmas album that he did. It might have been the Wonder
that
one
was
that
the
you're talking
Wonder
about.
one,
You
with
Can't
the
Make
duet.
Old Friends.
Amazing.
And to be in the studio that day, to see them sing together for the last time, and just to see the way that Dolly works in the studio, it was really something amazing because she'll be like, okay, I'll give you the sweet. And then she runs it down. She's a sweet. I'll give you some, this one's going to have a lot of ad libs in it. I'm going to give this one a little more attitude, a little more thought. And she'd go through about 6, 7, 8 times. Wow. And then you'd have everything that you needed to pick from. But it was really cool to see her at work.
She is amazing. And I remember when they were doing You Can't Make Old Friends, she came over to Kenny's booth and she said, I just want you to know that if something happens to you, I cannot sing this song, when St. Peter meets us at the gate. And so Kenny said, you think I'm going before you? Like, it was always a joke, right?
David, do you have any memories of that session? I mean, that's a staple Christmas album.
I just remember the joy in the room. I mean, Dolly's a hoot, and it was just a fun time making that record. And I was, just a staff guy like you were at that time, but it was just a lot of joy in the room.
And he would do these Christmas shows. Was it always an annual thing, or was it just that I remember later?
Probably 30 years.
Yeah.
It was started the day after Thanksgiving, and depending on where we were. Sometimes we would have a production rehearsal in the city that we're playing for the first show in the day before Thanksgiving. Then Kenny would take the whole tour to some restaurant or some buffet where we'd have all that Thanksgiving dinner together. Wow. And then the first show would be the day after Thanksgiving, and we would go home the day before Christmas. Wow. And normally like 20 shows in 24 days, that type of stuff. It was a lot of work.
Do your Christmas shopping before Thanksgiving.
Get it in early.
And the bus bunks are always full of presents. So by the time the tour finished, you had like this much room in your bunk because it was full of gifts for everybody.
So it sounds like Kenny was pretty fun in the studio. Whenever it came down to work, what was that like?
It was not hard to get vocals. At least when I was involved, it was not hard to get vocals.
Yeah.
I remember pulling up, we used a Sony C800G when they first came out on his voice, and I remember hearing him sing through that for the first time. And I'm like, oh my God, that's Kenny Rogers. And he would sing, this was before, there were some Pro Tools like we were talking about, but it was not hard to get vocals on.
No, he was a great instrument.
And we kept everything. Especially once we got the Pro Tools, we didn't roll over anything because everything was great. It was never a hard job. It was never like, oh my God, we're here for 12 hours singing. It was never that. It was,
I think
he'd say, Wanda, call the pilots. It's time to go.
I know, he was always fast in the studio.
Yeah.
He really was. I remember Ken Cragen telling this story when we were at dinner. He said that they were at Kenny's studio in LA, and Barry Gibb had written Islands in the Stream.
Oh, nice.
And so Ken said that Kenny's doing it, and he's like, I don't even like this song anymore because he just couldn't get it right. And Ken said, oh, you know what? Dolly Parton has a place right down the street. Let me see if she's in town, and let's just try this song as a duet because it wasn't meant as a duet.
Wow.
Yeah, and so, of course, she comes bebopping in the studio. And Kenny said he loved the song after that. When she put her touch in there, changed everything, and he loved it.
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
great
great.
story.
Well, that Barry Gibb they were on fire at that moment.
Oh,
too.
absolutely.
Gold after gold, everything they touched. And wow, what a gift that was.
Yeah, I can't even imagine that song
Without.
without the two of them.
I know.
As not being a duet. Like, that's really hard for me to fathom.
Yeah.
It's kind of a happy accident.
Any fun road stories, okay? Seeing that you've seen it all. Any fun
Been around the world a few times.
Okay,
That'd be you.
I'll go way back. Get back to First Station days. We were playing Vegas. Like we were at I guess it was the Hilton when Elvis was there. It was the Hilton International. What was that called? Yeah. Anyway, but Elvis was in the main showroom, and then we were in this lounge. And the lounge was a pretty good sized room, maybe 2,000 people. It would be B.B. King for a set, and then the First Edition. So we were always end up having like 3 shows a night, and so and there'd be sometimes an hour and a half or 2 between our sets because there were so many acts involved. And we'd always go to the coffee shop. And this is like, we would be there for 2 weeks at a time. So we knew all the people in the restaurants and all that type of thing. And so we were between the shows. We were at a big table, kind of like this, was all the first edition. And so I told the restaurant manager, I said, today's Kenny's birthday. I said, can we just get him a big sundae and something so we can all sing and that type of stuff? She said, I'll take care of it. So she brings this salad bowl that, you mix salad about this big and had maybe 20 scoops of ice cream and nuts and bananas. It was about this big, And we all sang, and happy birthday, da, da, da. And he says, gosh, guys, I don't know what to do. And went, and buried his head in this thing. And he came up and he's got beard full of bananas and cherries and nuts and whipped cream and stuff. And it was so out of character for him to do something like
it's
that.
hard for me to believe that.
We just goes out like, oh my God. That was one of my favorite stories. So it was just not like him at all. But he had that sense of humor. He would just come and catch you everywhere.
Yeah. Jules, you had, when you were working, like, you had the ability, didn't he? He kind of hung out with you a little bit, didn't he? Or you offered
Well, I
you
went to his house in the house in Colbert, Georgia.
Yeah.
We were doing vocals for a movie that he did some of the music for, and it was all Tascam D88s, so it was all little tape machines, and basically took a whole studio down there. And when I got there, I got in, pulled up to the gates. I'm like, wow, look at this place, and called the attendant. They let me in, and he met me at the front door. He said, come around back, and there's an easier place to get in. And he said, but before you do that, let me take you on a tour of the whole place. So we get in the golf cart, and he gives me a tour. I mean, it is a beautiful 18-hole golf course that surrounds the whole house.
That's amazing.
And he's showing me all the whole place. And went for an hour, and I'm thinking, you're working, man. Half the day. And so, anyway, he's so friendly and so kind and showed me the whole place. And then we go in, we set up, and we record the vocal. It was just me and him, and that had been the only time I'd ever worked where it was just me and him. There was nobody else, and he was an absolute pleasure, and consummate pro. It went really well, and then he said, "You want to hang out? You want to spend the night?" And I said, "Well, I got to work tomorrow on another gig." And so we sat on the couch. We had chocolate cake together. We watched a little TV. He said, he goes, "You sure you don't want to stay? We got a full-time masseuse. You can get a massage from." I'm like, "Golly, I want to stay." I had to go do some stupid other gig, But he was so kind, and I thought he's just like another one of us, and that was something I'll never forget.
Nice.
He loved people.
What was your reaction when you first heard? Now, you've heard the original stereo version. I'm sure you heard it a bunch of times. You had lived with it, right? Because you're putting the sequencing together, which was amazing in and of itself. But now you heard this Atmos version, and I have my own personal little effects, feelings with it, and how it was always something that seemed to touch somebody in that room that day. That's what I would like to say, right? Maybe we'll start with you. What do you remember? I mean, I know you guys just got to kind of reacquaint yourself before we came in and we listened in the studio, so you guys can kind of appreciate it again.
I cried.
You cried.
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot.
It was just because all of a sudden I spent so much time with him as a friend, and then he's passed away a couple of years, and I really hadn't heard his voice the way I'm used to hearing it. And so just sit there, and all of a sudden, he's like right here, right across from me. It's like
The
it
realness.
was just too real for me. It really was. Because it was so him, and it was so rich, and that's how I remembered him singing and all that type of stuff. So it was emotional.
Yeah. I can imagine, man.
Yeah.
That's amazing, and I appreciate you saying that. I mean, it was.
Well, that's what music is about.
Yeah,
Really.
that connection.
The emotional connection.
It's about feeling that connection with the artist. And I mean, you had 46 years with them, so you should know.
There was a bigger chunk of friendship involved because I spent a lot of time with him away from touring too. It wasn't, we'd play golf together. I'd go down to the farm or something like that. There was even one time when he lived in LA, he called me to do some work on his house because I had some carpenter skills. He was building something. And I went and knocked on the door, and this guy answered. I said, "Is Penny there?" And he said, "Keith, what's wrong?" And I looked up, and he had shaved his beard. I had no facial hair whatsoever. Yeah, and I didn't recognize him. So it was one of those things that like catches you off guard. But yeah, he was a friend to me more so than anything. So
I felt like Keith did it. I felt like he was going to come around the corner. I mean, the sound made it feel so real. It was really magical. It warmed my heart, and then it made me sad that he wasn't going to come around the corner. Right. very emotional and something you just think about for days, I wish you could hear it like that for days. I wish I had that set up in my house.
Yes.
Yes.
We can do it.
We can arrange.
We can,
Yeah. If he could be here, and he is here with us, but and hear what you guys have put together. He would love this more than anything, how sound has evolved into this.
Absolutely.
He would appreciate this so much.
I keep coming back to you, Jason, because you sequence this, you put this together, you guys, both of you, but you put together this album. I know I'm really harping on it, but it is, and it tells that story. But what's in my personal thing in this room that day, and I was almost as emotional as you. I mean, when we did the playback for everybody, and there was a lot of not dry eyes, in the house, and that's the beauty, and that's what we get to really enjoy about Atmos. These guys, I'm just the fan. I'm the fan of this table, right? So
we're all fans.
We're all fans,
We're all
but these
fans.
guys and David, they get to mix this, and you guys live in the studio, and when it's Atmos, you're hearing on a massively, insanely great system, and it's getting out there, and the Apple users or the Amazon users, they use the headphones, and it's good. We know it's going to be a little better right now, but it's getting there. But then the cars, when you're in your car, you're going to hear this technology. You're going to be able to do this. What you heard, you're going to be able to be driving, and it's going to be coming through your car speakers. And I hope and I just wait for that to happen. But you will get an emotional connection to anything you know and have heard to death. And then you're hearing it this way, and you're like, oh, I'm hearing things I never heard before.
What were you expecting?
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Came in?
Well, I had never heard anything Atmos before, so I was
Perfect.
Yeah, it was.
Perfect.
It was just.
The bar was already here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I mean, it was just absolutely. I was overtaken when I first heard it, and it was. You did such a masterful job. It was just wonderful. And I think we'd be remiss too if we didn't also just, give some shout outs to some of these. If you look in the credits of the record, you can see all the producers, all the musicians, all the songwriters, of course, and all of that. But
The compilation work was amazing. I had to say, like putting all that things together to find it all, and
well, that's great to hear. And we have some legends working on this record, along with Kenny the Legend, Tony Brown producing, Brent Mayer, Kyle Lennon, and Victor Krause. Going back to what you were talking about, where we just stripped Kenny's pristine, isolated vocal out of 2 songs because they were more along the lines of demos as far as the music that was around them. So we wanted to really take those from the bottom up, from the ground up. And so Kyle and Victor did an amazing job on I Wish It Would Rain and Wonderful Tonight.
Beautiful.
And, it did sound like he was at the start of Wonderful Tonight, that he was just sitting in the room with acoustic guitar, which you don't hear a lot of on his recordings, especially a ballad like that. And it was just, close your eyes. He's right there, like you said. And I kept thinking the same thing that you had mentioned. It's just like, if he could just be here and experience this. And when I got done listening to the whole album, it was so exhilarating. I left the studio and I literally was drained, but in the best way possible. But it was just every emotion. I cried, I smiled, I thought of what would it be like for him to hear this. And so it's just all these things. But again, you did just a fantastic job. I could not imagine hearing it in a better way. And my hope is the same as your guys. It's just like, so everybody could hear this album that way and so many other albums, because it's just a mind-blowing experience. You're like immersed into, I almost see this like this is a motion picture, but an audio motion picture.
Is there a particular song that just like hit you the hardest?
Yeah, I think just in the context of the whole album and the story of life, I think the one that hits the hardest for me, besides Goodbye, which really hits hard, is the last track, but I Will Wait for You is just so cinematic, and that was produced solely by Kenny's longtime, many decades bass player, Chuck Jacobs, and he just did a wonderful job on that track. It's just beautiful, and David brought out all these things that I'd never heard in the stereo mix, of course, and it just sounds like a movie in itself. But that was just really emotional because I almost envision Kenny singing that from heaven,
Yeah.
And it's just very emotional, but that's probably the one that really got me. And then you got Goodbye on the back end of that.
Right.
It's like the double.
The double shot, the little
Yeah.
Well,
the hook and the
Atmos
jab.
oftentimes, that's often the comment I hear because anytime people come to my studio, or whether it's here and listen to an Atmos mix, they almost always say the same thing. First off, they're blown away. But they say, I can hear stuff I didn't hear in the original. It's not like we put stuff in there and turn stuff up. It's just the isolation, but yet it's all still glued together like a real mix. They can hear stuff that they may have heard in the original stereo mix, but it didn't hit them the same way. And now you've got stuff coming out, and you can hear everything. And that's almost unanimous has been the comment when most people hear Atmos for the first time.
Well, David and I had an interesting thing happen when we listened down to, I think it was Am I Too Late off the record. Compressed in stereo. Nobody caught this, but actually on the finished version of this song, there was a little ad lib that Kenny did at the end of the song, a little run.
Yeah.
And we noticed that it was a little bit under, so we did a little fixing on that. But that was the only thing that was ever touched in the
Nothing was. There was no tuning or any of that stuff. Nothing was fixed that way.
It was really interesting, though, because it was all layered up and nobody could hear it.
A lot of times in the stereo, the compression in the stereo and everything's in there, but in Atmos, with it opened up, you get to hear it in the room that it presents itself in a different way. Right? You can be more obvious to you, or
Which is almost always better, too.
you can hear it. It's a great way to listen, and I hope that everybody gets to hear it that way. And cars are, it's going to be great in cars.
Cars are amazing.
That car over there in that parking lot sounds amazing.
It's amazing.
When you hear something that you've heard so many times, you're thinking, okay, well, this song again. The first time I sat down and listened to Atmos, I heard a song that I had heard at least 1,200 times throughout my life.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought was, wait, I didn't know that was there.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, whoa, looking around, trying to find where the sound's at because, of course, I can see sounds. But, it's almost to what you're saying. You can find a little bit of the imperfections because you can't hide anymore.
Yeah,
if you're pulling it off the wall, kind of doing the periscope, I always think about it like, and trying to explain this to someone who's never experienced it or had the opportunity to experience what Atmos sounds like. The easiest and simplest way I can put it is there's two speakers and there's a door right in between it. And if you could walk into that door and look around your song, and there's the keyboard player, and, all those things. But it makes me so happy, especially with like your situation, to be able to come in not really knowing what to expect, and then just bam, like it hits you right in the forehead,
Yeah.
We
It was
had
like-
a few moments with artists in the beginning too. Well, and I'm sure the song you're referring to is the one that we all
Yes, sir.
So full disclosure, it's Rocket Man. Was one of the, and why it's special, and to me it holds up for a lot of reasons. It was one of the first mixes.
It's a great mix.
It is a great mix.
It's a really good
And
mix.
Greg Penny did it, and he did a fantastic job.
Credit to Greg Penny.
Absolutely, but people are like, "Oh, it's Rocket Man," but I'm telling you, that song intimately, and then for the first time, and it kind of touched on what you just said. It's like a movie. That's the way I would describe it to somebody. I remember being dragged into the student drag, but asked to join in the studio across the street. I was here for a convention, and Pat said, "Come on over and listen to it." And I didn't know what to expect, and the chills, because it's just like you're getting enveloped by this song, and the guitars that slide over you, and all those points. But now you're like, oh, you're like in the middle of a movie. It's almost embracing you, and that. I know it sounds corny, but that's what it feels like. Everybody has their own experience, but we're not trying to reinvent the song, and that's a big piece of it. It's like some artists they think, well, you can't reinterpret my work. Well, we're not. Your work is pristine. And you know what? And if you want to hear it on a CD, cassette, so if you want to listen to it on a streaming service, go for it. You have it. This is just a new
Now, there's been a few
format.
times, though, there was a project I did several years ago here, and the artist said, hey, I like what you're doing. Let's update the mixes. Take it a little differently.
Yeah.
Like as another vehicle, which we don't typically do. It's very unusual. But the artist himself requested, make it a little bit different. So I'm like, okay. So we did, and he liked it.
I liked it. And I think that's the big piece. And that's why we have you here, because we wanted you to hear it. It wasn't going to go live until you guys said you liked it. You could have come in the room and said, ooh, what'd you guys do? Or this is not what we
world is
expected. It goes away. And I think that's the other piece. And we like to kind of take the artist or wherever we can, it's the right approval. We're not trying to reinvent anything. We're just trying to enhance the
In
experience.
a perfect world, the artist would be in every mix.
Right. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Not always available.
And that's the goal of the format too now with new artists. Like they're writing to the format. Some people are just like they love it and they're literally like, oh, hey, well now I can put something up here, I can put something over here, and they're writing to it, and that's exciting too. So the stuff's coming out now. The newer artists and new records coming out. They're thinking in that capacity because it's becoming mainstay, which is great.
Yeah. Well, and for like you talked about how close and intimate the sound can be in that format. You know, you feel like you're inside of the mix almost. You're with the artist. I had an artist, and the song came out maybe 4 or 5 years ago, so fairly recent. And okay, yeah, let's do the Atmos thing. The label wants it, let's get it done. But it was a ballad, and the first verse had a couple harmonies. Well, he heard it and approved all the records, and then came back and said, "There's one song that I want to mix tweak." I'm like, okay, what do you want louder? What do you want quieter? He said, I need those harmonies out of the first verse. It's too much power because now it's so intimate whenever I'm listening to it. So there are artists getting involved whenever we get that opportunity that get in there and get to treat this like a moment, like a separate
Another
release.
version of the mix.
Yeah, and it's just like this. I don't want people to hear it in this format with that part. Or I want another part in there. Let me record it and send it to you. And I've had people ask for more reverb just because, why not? It's all around you.
Now we have 9.4 reverb.
Feels
Why
like
not?
a blanket.
I have something to throw in there about "Life Is Like a Song." That, but you correct me if I'm wrong on this. But one of the things that I think is really cool, that I think Kenny would think was cool about this, just kind of as a side note, was so you mixed the Atmos version of "Life Is Like a Song" on the board that Purple Rain was captured on. Is that right?
Mhm.
And David himself was an engineer on Purple Rain and several other Prince albums, right?
Yeah, I started on Controversy 1999, Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day, Under the Cherry Moon.
Those are pretty good
Good
records.
stuff. Yeah.
They're okay.
That
Nicely
board is
done.
still in there.
I thought that was a really cool kind of tidbit that he told me, and then tying that in a step further. So a little known fact, but I'm sure you guys may know this, and possibly you guys. But Kenny, in probably the mid or earlier mid '80s, he asked Prince to write a song for him or send him a song that maybe he had already written. And it had to be around the time, I think, of Purple Rain, when he was on top of the world,
Wow.
And Kenny wasn't doing too bad himself there in 83, 84. Prince eventually sent him this song, and it's on the 1986 Kenny Rogers album. They don't make them like they used to. And it's called "You're My Love," I think. And if you look at the credits, it's he did under the pseudonym Joey Coco. The first time that he
Oh,
is.
that's great.
And
I did not know that.
and anyway, so I just thought that tying that in, Kenny would get a big kick out of
Oh,
that.
yeah.
And he would always tell me, too, that he wished that he still had the original demo that Prince sent him because it was all
Sure.
Prince, all the instruments, vocals.
Absolutely.
But
drums.
somewhere over the years, he lost track of it. He couldn't find it. But kind of a cool side note to that.
I did
that'd be good to
a
dig that
number
up.
of those where Prince wrote songs for Sheena Easton. I was working with Sheena, and she asked me to ask Prince for a song, and he wrote "Sugar Walls," and that was his pseudonym on that was Alexander Nevermind. And then the Bangles' "Manic Monday" was a Prince song. So he wrote a number of songs for other prolific.
I've got kind of the opposite story from that one. George Martin produced, what album did he do on Kenny? He produced a.
The heart of the matter.
So when he came over to talk to Kenny about the album, we were on tour. And so the big news of the day is Jordan Martin's going to be in the dressing room at 6 o'clock. So stay out. So of course we were all in the dressing room right there, and he comes in and we're dying to hear Beatles stories and all this type of stuff. But anyway, he brings this. We have the dressing room stuff set up. There at that time it was cassettes. So and they're talking about the album. He said, "Oh yeah, by the way, Sir Paul has this cassette of songs he wrote for you that you might want to listen to the album." So they load them up in the cassette and they push the play button and they go through about half a song and then they go through the next song. And Kenny and George just both look at each other and like, this is pure crap.
Oh, wow.
It was like Paul McCartney tried to write a country song because it had to have a tractor and a truck in it or something like that, you know. And they literally took it out of the cassette deck into the trash can. And so I'm sitting by the trash can, kind of like this, you know, and I got that cassette out of that trash can.
Do you still have it?
It's somewhere in some house, but I still got it. Yeah.
Nice.
Don't tell Paul that, though.
Yeah. I think you just did. Working with Kenny's Atmos stuff has been, for me, it's all about his voice. You know, it's just his presence in the room, you know, being right there. And you guys did a great job putting all that together.
There were so many people that worked on this, and it was my pleasure to co-executive produce with you, Wanda, and with Ken Levitin, and Mike Ruthick was hugely involved, and all the team at UME. One of the really cool things about this album, too, is that Kenny's band and crew were involved. There was 3 members, longtime members for decades of Kenny's band that produced tracks on this record. Chuck Jacobs, Steve Glassmeyer, and Randy Dorman. So I think Kenny would also think that that was very cool because he was a very loyal guy, and everybody that was out there on the road for all those decades, I don't think anyone longer than you, but it was such a family and a brotherhood. And
Like I don't know if I said it earlier or whatever, but by the time that Kenny retired, I mean, the newest member on our tour had been there 22 years.
yeah, yeah,
So Wanda's right about it being one big family out there.
yes.
This has been amazing.
Amazing.
And hearing some stories and people so close to Kenny and the reactions to being able to bring something back and bring something that's been there and bring it back into the forefront as it should be, and kind of breathe new life into the same music that we've been living with. And I'm certainly excited for more to come. But
absolutely.
if you guys would join me, I'd like to sing Happy Birthday.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
So cool.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Kenny. Happy birthday to you.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Thank you guys. You're awesome. And let's go listen to some more music.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
So thank you guys.
Thank you for
Thank you.
including me.
Thank you so much.